Welcome to the Total Wireless Store, where total confidence awaits.
Music powers my morning runs, but data overages slow me down.
Don't worry, you got this with the Total Wireless Store. Just bring your number and get 10 gigs of lightning-fast 4G LTE data with unlimited talk and text for $40 a month.
I'd run to the Total Wireless Store right now for that deal, if I wasn't already here.
Data girl.
Discover the Total Wireless Stores and get total confidence. The latest phones, the best network, all at great prices. Excludes TracFone Wireless Inc. brand sports. $40 plan must remain active to keep bonus data after 12/31/18. Terms at stores.totalwireless.com.
Hello, world. Welcome aboard, all you ground troops spinning around smartly. And thank you for joining. This is TJ Morris with ET Radio, or TJ Morris ET Radio, TJMorrisRadio.com, TJMorrisETRadio.com. And we're very happy to be here on a Friday night, picking it back up again for Cosmos Connection. And we've been working with this location, with Blog Talk Radio, since June 3rd, 2012, with Janet Carol Lessin, my co-host. We're moving along here at a pace, probably a snail's pace to many, but a hare's pace to others, so we make no apologies for that. So take what you can and leave the rest today, because we've got a very fascinating young lady, beautiful woman, very beautiful specimen, and very professional. But she has a story to tell. And, you know, Janet and I, we grew up in America. We were very blessed to be white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, not Catholics. But today we're universal life ministers. We're open-minded. We're all about the unexplained and the journey of all of us, especially women. So Torah is a woman that's written a book. She's going to tell us her story. She's young enough to be my daughter, and yet brilliant. And I can't wait for her to tell you her story. She's left the world behind of the Amish people, and her journey's been very hard. But she's alive and well on planet Earth, living in New York City. How hard is that, folks, for anybody, much less a woman that grew up in a culture that is so different than most of ours. And I was able to go in and out of the Amish world only because I lived in Kentucky, and we had some Amish that I would go and purchase large amounts of produce from, and we would resell it in the city. They lived way out by a big lake up in the mountains, and they had little black buggies with horses. And they treated their horses so good. It was absolutely beautiful. So I understand that one of my grandmothers were Mennonite. So when I grew up, the little girls wore dresses and stockings and weird-looking shoes and little caps on their head, my cousins. And when they would come over, they were my cousins, but they were Mennonites, not Amish. And so there's stories about my great-grandmother hanging up her petticoats. I guess it was during the World War. So that's my limited understanding is why I'm so excited to have her. Now, Janet Carol Lessin and I had her on our Cosmos Connection on another studio station called Cosmos Connection, but we've moved it back over here. Mike Ringley has it, but he takes 2 weeks before he'll release the copies to us. So fortunately, Torah took a liking to us, and we like her too. So Janet's been very kind to give me a long printout. And Torah, you may want to see her pictures here at Blog Talk Radio, TJ Morris ET Radio. And if you want to call in and ask her questions, I've only told one of my personal friends here in Gulf Breeze, but the call-in number is 347 945-7207. And we'll probably take a few calls if you want to call in towards the last, at least after the last hour. So maybe about, 5 or 10 after the hour. So it's 6:04 Central, 7:04 Eastern. And let me get my Janet on my, just, this is protocol. Get my co-host. I'm pushing the button, Janet. Janet Carol Lessin of Hawaii. How are you tonight?
Yes, I'm great. It's a bit hot here in Maui, Wowie, hippy dippy land today, but I think I know why. My fan isn't on over on the far side of the room, so the air just to one place, going around in circles. I have a big living room, and I have to put fans in each corner and get the air moving, or else it's real stuffy and stagnant. So, but I'm having a great time. I like doing these shows with you. I enjoy Revolution Radio. Like you said, they just started it's going to be 2 weeks before you can put it up. So because of that and many other reasons, but we're adding this. We're going back to doing our blog talks. We started that way. I have a lot of people. They come on. They want us to record a show with them, and they need it right away. So we help people promote events and things that are going on in our speakers' lives and the lives of the people we interview. So we like to facilitate that. So I'm glad to be back here on Fridays on Cosmos Connection, and I look forward to today's show. Okay, I'm done walking around. It's very hot. Don't mind me.
Okay. Well, Janet is an agent, consultant, and organizer with myself, and she's actually been booking the shows roughly for the last 4 years, unless I was working with our association, our Universal Life, on Sundays. And we've always had that, so you know who we are, and we've always had our ACO club. If you're interested, we have ACOAuthorsBookClub.com. We have ACOAssociation.com, and then I have AscensionPsychic.com. And my name is Teresa J. Morris, but the show's name TJ. My publisher at UFO Digest suggested I use TJ Morris with ET after it, and bless his heart, he's passed. And that was while I was really promoting the UFO industry, and we still do with UFOassociation.com. Jan and I have aliencontact.org, but we're really promoting the Stargate to the cosmos. If you go back to the beginning of the blog talk here in the archives, go all the way back to June 6, 2012, for the first 3 or 4 episodes, all it was Janet, me, and Tommy, and Dr. Lessin, and Lynn Caston, and Apollo talking about having a gathering. So we're still working on that, October 25th to the 28th, and we may talk a little bit on the hour just to give us a break. But Janet, without further ado, let's get Torah on here to introduce herself. Do you want to read her bio for her? Is it better to let you read a little bit of it?
So I didn't bring it up, and why don't we just have her?
All right. Well,
tell herself about tell us about herself. Yes.
All right. She's got Torah, TORAH, Torah Bontrager.com, and she's the author and memoir of An Amish Girl in Manhattan, and she escaped from. She uses that lightly. That's what's going to be so fun. But she was an Amish girl and became the first Amish person to graduate from an Ivy League school, Columbia University, very prestigious in the New York City area, or maybe it has the New York City address. Her story's been featured on MTV, Tim Ferriss's blog, Forbes.com, and Huffington Post. And she's an entrepreneur, and she's paying her own way in life. So let's hear about this wonderful woman and get on with the show. So here we go. And then, Janet, you and I may be able to ask a question here and there, but let's see. This is not going to Torah, you're live and on the air now. Will you tell us the proper way to say your name? Hi, Torah. Tell us how to say your name.
Oh, and you've got some feedback there, TJ. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to you might want to mute me while you're talking because we're getting a lot of feedback.
Okay, am I on? This is Torah.
Yeah. Just if you're sitting in front of a computer, turn the sound down. It's got feedback.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, but it's like an echo. It's usually because the. Are you on your cell phone?
No, I'm on my computer.
Oh, well, you'll have to turn your sound down if you're on the show. Are you?
Okay.
You're not. You don't have your phone. You just have to talk on your phone without looking at the show or having the show turned up. Do you have the volume on your computer?
Does this help at all? Does this change the volume?
It changes the feedback loop.
Or the
because
feedback?
you had an echo.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what you did.
Well, I'm using the earbuds in the computer, so hopefully that'll solve the feedback problem.
Okay. Janet, what's she sound like now? Go ahead and talk for a few minutes, Torah. Tell us how to say your name.
So my name is pronounced Torah Bontrager. The last name is pronounced Bontrager, and it's 100% Old Order Amish. Anyone who has this last name comes from the Amish at some point in time.
So very Amish.
Hi.
So that right there
Amish.
will tell people.
I
That's
wanted
right.
to say that it sounds for me, your voice sounds very tinny. Could you just take off the earbuds for just a moment, and we'll see if that's any better?
How does this sound? How's the sound now?
That sounds actually.
She has an echo. It's a lofty sound because she lives in a high ceiling place, don't you, Torah? It's a very echoey
I'm not
sound.
hearing the echo now. Let me just Torah, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm not hearing the echo now. But try that again.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Check there.
Not getting the echo now.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yay.
Technically,
okay, now, folks. We should have checked it before, but since we'd already done a show, I apologize. I didn't even think that we may have a technical or sound, but it's fine now. So now, moving right along, why don't you say your whole name and was that your birth name, and go into your Amish story because you heard your intro, but mentioned your book and An Amish Girl in Manhattan. But wow, this is exciting. So let's start wherever you want, Torah, but please say your complete name, author, how you would describe yourself to the listening audience, because some people may want to have you on their shows as well. So your official intro, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you, TJ. First of all, thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Torah Bontrager. Last name is Bontrager. It's a very Amish name, Old Order Amish name, last name. And I grew up with no electricity, no cars. I speak English as a second language. I had an 8th grade only Amish education, which means that I didn't have any science classes in Amish school, as one example of things that I didn't learn. And then I literally escaped in the middle of the night at age 15 with only what I could carry, which were the clothes on my back and $170 in my pocket. And I'm the author now of the memoir, An Amish Girl in Manhattan. The subtitle is Escaping at Age 15, Breaking All the Rules and Feeling Safe Again. And as TJ had mentioned, I'm the first and so far only first-generation Amish person to graduate from an Ivy League school, which is in in Manhattan, Columbia University. So now what I'm doing today, my work is about addressing the culture of sexual assault. I think that we're pretty aware now as a whole in society about the issues of sexual assault thanks to the Me Too age. And my work is really through my nonprofit, the Amish Heritage Foundation, to address the issues that we Amish have inside the church and the problems of transitioning into the outside, which people on the outside in mainstream society aren't aware of. And of course, to add even more complexity to my story, I'm also an ET experiencer. I've had ET and UFO experiences as a child and adult. I've actually never spoken about it publicly until the other day with Jana and TJ on Aquarian Radio, and this is going to be my second public time that I talk about this. So questions?
Well, we'll get started. Janet, any questions before we let her just go on with her story? Because I'm sure everybody's going to want to read the book, but we need to let her sort of give whatever information she wants to give. What do you think, Janet?
Well,
you ready,
I
or
would like
what do you want to do?
break it down a little bit into sections, and of course, whatever you want to do, you're the lead interviewer here. This is your show, and I'm your co-host. But I'm fascinated with the Amish. I visit them every summer for, I was married for about 10 years to my second husband, who lived in Pennsylvania. We went down to Lancaster. We would go there because it was like, for me, it was like traveling back in time. And there was a part of me that was wondering, how would we survive if our whole system collapsed? This was pre, what do they call those people that prepare for disasters? But I had happened upon a book called The Late Great Planet Preppers. This was pre-preppers, and I happened upon a book called The Late Great Planet Earth, and I read it because at that time I was trying to prove to the world that I can read even a strong Christian book and still have my beliefs, and so because they challenged me and said, well, how do you know? So this was Hal Lindsey, an evangelist, and they read it, and it was Revelations, and it kind of described what would happen after this apocalypso, this apocalyptic event, and we would be basically rendered back to the Stone Age, and we wouldn't have electricity. And so I used to go study the Amish. It's like, well, how do they do it? How can they they feed themselves, and they seem to have happy, wholesome lives. And, of course, as the outsider, I didn't know the internal politics. I think I even had to go to, and you can verify this for me, Torah, do they ever have open, church things? I remember there was some kind of thing we went to that was open to the English, was outside, and it was some kind of, I don't know what it was. They were singing. They were singing spiritual songs. It could have been some kind of church service or something. But anyway, I remember we got to see it. It wasn't commercialized like the restaurants, and they said eat Amish style, and you could sit there and, a group table, and, yeah. So anyway, I was fascinated, and I didn't realize why I was fascinated until I kind of thought about it, and then I remembered, oh, yeah, because back in the 70s, I read about the late great planet Earth, and I was curious how the world would adapt. And the Amish seemed to never skip a beat because they never went into the world of technology, so they weren't really programmed to use technology. They knew how to raise enough food to feed themselves with just an animal pulling. Getting feedback again. Pulling some kind of manual equipment, and they did have some things with motors. I don't know. I was very confused. So I guess my first question is, you were saying in the last show that there are various types of Amish, and they have varying levels of technology. I didn't know the Amish I was looking at, they didn't have buttons. But they were allowed to have straight pins or something like that. And
they didn't even have buttons? Are you sure?
Wow. Yeah, I remember I was shocked that there's no buttons. There's no buttons. And maybe it wasn't all of them, but I hadn't really noticed, and then I go, how are they holding their clothes there? I thought pins would be awkward because you'd eventually stick yourself. Anyway. Huh. And then, let's see what else do I remember. The ones that I was observing and hanging out with had kind of they were allowed to have bright colored shirts. The men had the bright or bolder color shirts. They didn't use pastels. They were solid colors. And I'm trying to remember what the women wore. But I don't
Probably
think they were all
pale
one color.
Gray, pale blue. The guys,
Yeah,
and she can get into this, folks. We're going to let Torah get into all this because she briefly mentioned it last time. But now our guys in Kentucky wore jeans made from denim jean, but they sure didn't look like the kind you bought in the store. The pockets were different. They wore suspenders, and they had a blue, I don't know if you call it royal blue, strange color blue. And the women all wore something, I don't know what you'd call it, but they had more than, you talked about, Torah, the cap. So I guess we're going to start with how we see them with our eyes and why the different communities wear different colors, Torah, if you don't mind.
Sure. So within the Amish, there's a range from very conservative to more modern or liberal, and by that I mean they're in terms of material possessions or what they allow in terms of technology. It ranges from very conservative to more modern. The conservative end of the old order Amish, so I'm only speaking about old order Amish. Now there's also such a thing as Schwarzenegger Amish, Swiss Amish, New Order Amish, Beachy Amish, Amish Mennonite. We won't go into any of those. The Old Order Amish are what are the original Amish in terms of when they broke away from the Mennonites in the 1600s. And how you can tell the difference as an insider, as a member of the Amish, someone who's born and raised, is by looking at their style or of dress, or their basically Amish fashion. What kind of fashion are they wearing? Like what colors are they wearing, and what's the style or patterning of their clothes? So, for example, the brighter the colors are, the more modern that person is. And the ones on the very conservative end normally do not allow bright colors. You will see them wearing dark blue, maybe royal blue, might be the brightest color, lots of grays and dark greens maybe. And in terms of grays, I don't think they might not even allow gray. So it'd be brown, dark brown. For some reason, gray is a color that isn't allowed. I don't know the answer as to why. That's just one of the things. But you'll see a lot of browns, dark blues, and maybe dark green. That depends on the community. And then you'll also, in terms of buttons, as Janet had mentioned, the women are not allowed to have buttons. They fasten everything with straight pins, like sewing pin or a tailor's pins, how a traditional tailor would what they would use when they're making clothes. And the men, however, on the other hand, are allowed to use buttons, although certain types of Amish on the very strict end won't allow that either for the men. They will have to use what's called hooks and eyes. And I don't know what that is, how to explain that. If you're not familiar with the term, just look it up, Google it, and there should be pictures or an explanation. In no case are you allowed to have zippers, neither the men nor the women. Now, in terms of buttons for the women on the more modern end, I don't know that that's allowed either. I've never seen that myself, but I'm not the authority to talk about that, because I was raised in a small community from a range of very conservative to modern, but we weren't allowed to have buttons as women. So that's not saying that in the big communities that the women may not be allowed to have buttons instead of straight pins. I just don't know for sure. And another thing that defines the more modern Amish from the more conservative is that the modern ones will be allowed to have, depending on the community, because every community has different rules, Some will allow you to have bikes and gas, propane-powered stoves and propane-powered refrigerators in the house and indoor bathrooms. And then you can go from, sort of a more strict community, downgrade, to being allowed to have indoor bathrooms but no propane-powered refrigerators and stoves, which is what my paternal grandparents had at one point. And then a further downgrade would be where you're not allowed to even have running hot water, but you could have running cold water. So that's the range that we're talking about. Questions so far?
Yeah, Torah, who makes these decisions? And I mean, how do the men not stick themselves? How does anybody not stick themselves? Especially, I mean, that seems like a delicate place to be dealing with pins, especially as a man.
Well, so for pins, is that the question, Janet? How you don't stick yourself with pins?
Yeah. I have two parts. Who makes up these rules? Is this like a book that's written, or who makes up these rules? And do they ever change the rules? Do they say, I think it's time we move to buttons? And and then the second part was, I was just envisioning the pin thing, having to deal with the pin thing, and I thought that would be really hard not to stick yourself.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer
that goes back.
I'm going to mute again. I'll mute. Go ahead.
Okay. So I'll answer the pins question first. How do you not stick yourself with the pins? Well, that's impossible in the beginning, at least in my experience. When you turn 10, and this is generally speaking in terms of the rules of whatever church you come from, usually, it's age 10, it could be a little bit older or perhaps even younger. But at age 10, the girls switch their dress pattern from buttoning up in behind on the back side to having to be closed up in front with straight pins. And that is, in the beginning, to learn how to wear straight pins. That's a skill that you have to learn. The buttons or the pins used to fall out all the time. I would be cooking or baking something, and I'd have to constantly keep an eye on the pins to make sure that they didn't fall into the cookie dough, for example. And eventually, you just learn how to wear the straight pins, and that doesn't mean that you won't ever lose a straight pin, but it does get easier. So I don't really know how to explain it other than maybe it's similar to learning how to wear heels. It's something that you have to practice, and eventually you can walk in, 4-inch heels. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Do they have those pins on baby clothes? And how do babies not end up, sticking themselves?
The babies don't wear straight pins, so they wear buttons or hooks and eyes, depending on the community. Their clothes are fastened with buttons or hooks and eyes. It's only the women who wear straight pins, and only from age 10 onwards, or it might be a little bit older, depending on the community's rules. That's when they determine that the girl is now becoming a woman. She's going through puberty. Now it's time for her to change her dress, her fashion, from being buttoned up through the back to being buttoned up through the front with straight pins.
Okay, well,
I'm
what about Anabaptists?
Minimizing noise. So, TJ, you take it for a while, because it seems to be when I go on, I get feedback. So I'm going to mute. Okay, go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, that's real interesting, Jan. We haven't had that for years. But you didn't call in on a computer. Janet, I know you called in on your phone, I guess. And I called in on my phone, and so
Yes, but now
it may be because
you're echoing.
Yeah,
Do you
that
have
doesn't
your
make sense.
sound up on your computer? I'm going to mute because it makes it worse when I'm unmuted.
Yeah, no, I'm on my phone, so not sure what's going on. All right, so these are Amish Mennonites and Quakers began their origins in the old country, folks. They're all based on the Christian Protestant faith, but they broke off from Germany, Switzerland, and then later on, I guess the Quakers were England. But do you want to share the Anabaptists? They believe they're not to be baptized, or can you? You mentioned the New Age people, but they have New Age Amish too.
So the term is New Order Amish, not New Age. So what New Order means is that they're allowed to have electricity and cameras. That seems to be the thing that sets them apart from the Old Order is electricity, number one, and maybe cameras as well, maybe or maybe not. So how you can tell like the single universal rule to be considered Old Order Amish is that you don't have electricity and you drive around in horses and buggies and you don't allow cameras. So those are the three defining universal rules. That means you're Old Order Amish. All the other rules vary. They're up for grabs. And who makes those rules? Janet's question is the men. The men make those rules. The women have no voice at all. We Amish women are second-class citizens. We're expected and demanded to obey our husbands, or if we're not married, our father.
And what age does that change?
So from the time you're born as a female until you get married, you're supposed to obey your father. Now, technically, once you get baptized into the Amish church, you are considered an adult independent from your parents. However, if you're a female, that's not really the way it works. You're still expected to obey your father. If your father tells you you need to do X, Y, Z, you really don't have much freedom in comparison with if you have a brother who's baptized into the Amish church and not married yet. The boy has free reign. The boy is considered fully independent, and the female is never considered independent as a person. She's always under her father's rule as a single person or under her husband's rule as a married person.
Now, it's my understanding that the Amish, I don't know why I have feedback on your system.
I can try calling in with my phone. I don't know that it's going to be any better, but I can give it a shot.
Have you done other shows with no feedback? I don't hear any feedback right now.
Let her call
I don't hear
on her phone. It might be incompatibility between, because I'm on a phone, you're on a phone, and if she's on a phone, it might be all compatible. But yeah, it's
all right.
trying.
Well,
okay, I'm going to mute.
Okay, so I'm going to dial in and just see if that resolves anything.
Okay, that'll be good. And let me put you on mute for a minute.
TJ.
Okay, now there's none. It is coming from her phone.
Okay, yeah, because TJ, you're not on the control panel for the show?
Yes, I'm on the control panel. It's the way I always do it, but I never have feedback. There's something I turned her phone on mute to check it, and it's you and me right now, so we have no feedback. So let's turn her on. Yeah, with everything's on. All right, now let's try that.
Okay, I'm calling in.
Oh, perfect.
TJ. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, perfect. That's all we needed. So we have to usually tell our folks, I'll give you the phone number, but we have to have you call in on a cell phone or a phone because computers don't seem to work with Skype, with the studio out in New York. I don't know why, but you're in New York, and the computer, I don't know how you called in on your computer, but those have some kind of feedback inside the computer, I've noticed. We have it sometimes with people that call in on Skype. So I guess they prefer, and they tell you that they prefer the studio to work with cell phones. So thank you, Torah, for not minding to call back in, not using your computer. It's just technology, and they seem to work better. So wonderful. So now let's talk about a little bit about the Amish and the Mennonites, but talking about the clothes we did and the colors, and it depends on the local people. But now Joseph Ammons, there was a split of two men. Some followed Simmons. Do you remember the gentlemen's names? They quoted it to me when I was in Kentucky. And the difference was some people followed one man and some followed the other, just like in the Mormons. Some followed Joseph Smith, some followed Brigham Young. And they went to Utah with Brigham Young. But what was the other? Joseph Allman, is that the guy, Amman, that started the Amish versus something Simons? Do you know his name, the other gentleman, Mennonites?
It was Jacob Amman, Amman, Jacob. He broke away from the Mennonites, and the person who started the Mennonites was Menno Simons. He was a Dutch person, and
Menno Simons.
Menno Simons started the Mennonites, founded the Mennonites. Jacob Amman broke away from Menno Simons, his version of religion, which was Mennonites. So Jacob Amman broke away. He had a disagreement, some ridiculous theological disagreements with Menno Simons. And Jacob Amman was from the Alsace area, like the border between, or the area between France, Switzerland, and Germany, that region. So Jacob Amman decided that he doesn't agree with some theological things, which is just petty and not even worth going into detail. If you really want to understand the specifics, you can find out about it on gameo.org, G-A-M as in Mike, E-O.org. Suffice to say, Amman decided that he was a very fundamentalist, sort of contentious person. And he went around to different Mennonite congregations at that time, because there were only Mennonites, and this is in Europe, in Switzerland and Germany, and went around recruiting people to his point of view, and decided that he's going to shun and excommunicate anyone who doesn't agree with his interpretation of certain theological points. And that's how the Amish started, and that's what we're founded upon. We're founded upon petty, contentious theological differences.
Well, they didn't believe like the Catholics, nor did they believe in baptism. They were Anabaptist, meaning anti-baptism, right?
No, Anabaptist means one baptism, not anti-baptism. Anabaptist means one baptism, which means the Mennonites come from the Protestant Reformation thinking that, or a certain subset of it, that did not subscribe to infant baptism. So the Mennonites and other Anabaptist groups, they did not believe that infant baptism was valid. They believed that one should make that decision when one became an adult. So they considered if you were baptized as a child, that didn't count if you converted over to the Anabaptist way of thinking. So you became baptized, rebaptized as an adult.
So most people don't even understand the religions, period. I mean, in America, I grew up Baptist, and I just assumed everybody was a Baptist. I didn't even know there was Methodist or Lutheran or Episcopal or Catholic, because I lived in Monroe, Louisiana, and everybody was a Baptist. So we had the Southern Baptist Convention. It's really strong in Louisiana and Texas for sure. So when my mother moved to Texas, it was still Baptist. But then my sister learned about the Catholics. So that was my first introduction to anything other than I heard about Baptist, Methodist, and then Catholic. I didn't know about Episcopal. That we weren't educated in our world. Were you educated about all the different sects or differences of the Jesus story or the Bible?
The education I had was based on our specific religious lineage or history, meaning that I understood that during the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther and several other figures, broke away from the Catholics because they did not believe certain things that the Catholics believed in. So they broke away from the Catholics, and then eventually, out of that Protestant split, the Mennonites were born. And I didn't exactly understand how the Mennonites came about through the Protestant sort of path, except for the key point, which was we do not believe in infant baptism like the Catholics. So I didn't understand that there were Episcopalians or other versions of Christianity, or Catholicism. All I understood, there's the Catholics, there's the Protestants, and as a subset of the Protestants, there's the Anabaptists, and we're the one true church. We're the chosen ones.
Okay, that's good. Now, the same thing happened with, have you studied other world religions? Because I understand that, part of our problem in America is not accepting everybody's religious beliefs, and we're trying to change that into a universal, worship who thou wilt, for anybody, universally, and, whether it's your race, color, creed, ethnic origin, all the things we say in America and the United States of America. But at the same time, we have the problem with the Muslims, and then there's apparently, various groups in the Muslims. But the gentleman that started that, from what I understand, and people will call it blasphemy, or even talk blasphemy. Sounds funny, that blasphemy. If you even talk about the gentleman, but he was Jewish, and he couldn't read or write. He had to have a translation. But he started, and he said he started with Angel Gabriel came to him, but he didn't even worship in the same direction of Mecca or towards the Jewish, I guess you'd say Jerusalem, or, Mecca became a different direction, and now they, circle around I guess you'd say the cube, and what's inside that is a piece of a meteorite that came from the sky. So I this is very, very just blunt, folks, about simple things. So I'm not trying to offend anybody, but did you understand anything about that, or have you studied any other world religions?
So I, as an Amish child, was not aware of any religions other than the Catholics and the Protestants. And once I escaped, that was when I sought answers. I went on a quest for truth. I thought that there was, the truth with a capital T, a definitive answer, an absolute answer, an ultimate answer that was true for everyone, for everything. And I started out by looking into various versions of Christianity, and none of them satisfied. Long story short, I still couldn't get a satisfactory answer as to how God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit can be one. This whole Trinity thing was something that just didn't make sense to me. And there were other things that I just didn't resonate with, one of which was the Judeo-Christian God. That God character, I just couldn't, be on board with, because I read the Bible from cover to cover when I was 11 years old as a way to try to get answers as an Amish child. I would ask questions when I was an Amish child. Well, why can we pay someone to drive us around in a car, but we can't drive a car ourselves? Or why can't we have cameras? Why can't we have electricity, etc.? And I was always told as a young child, wait until you're older and then you'll understand. Or the Bible says so. Well, when I got older, I still didn't understand, and the adults took my questions as a sign of insubmissiveness, as challenging authority, and I was punished physically and verbally for asking questions. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go read the Bible myself because supposedly, apparently the Bible says so. And what I learned was that the Amish interpretation of the Bible, of the New Testament, of what Jesus really taught from my interpretation of it was incorrect. And I felt that I had a moral or ethical obligation to leave the Amish church. I could not practice a hypocritical religion. And I also did not resonate with the Judeo-Christian God of the Old Testament. To put it very bluntly, the Judeo-Christian God was a psychopath, in my opinion. He sanctioned rape, he sanctioned violence, all sorts of things. And I know if anyone is hearing that believes in the Judeo-Christian God, this is going to be appalling and shocking. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just saying if you read the Bible with, a non-judgmental point of view, read it at face value, you might come to the same conclusion.
Right, because of the avenging and carrying around I think let's go into your story because you're right. We will offend a whole lot of people, but that's okay. We do that apparently on Sunday anyway because we break it down. But as strong women, we're entitled to read the words and use our own discernment, folks. So take it for what it is.
We're entitled to offend people. We are entitled.
Freedom of speech, for First Amendment of the United States of America. All right, well, let's go into a bit broader. Let's go into you being an American woman and breaking away, because it's very important that you thought for yourself, which apparently wasn't allowed for women and children. So you're one of the fortunate ones, whether it's a cult, Amish, Mormons, Scientologists. We could go on and on and on, folks, but you believe what you want. We're not telling you, we don't mean to offend anyone. This is an open forum and a platform for thinkers. It's what Blog Talk Radio is, exactly that. It's a blog about talking. It's a log for blogging. Look up blog and look up talk. But we're thinkers and we're women, and I'm very offended by many women, including when I was at the Cancer Society sitting. It was very international, which I had been in Kentucky for roughly 20 years, even though I'd traveled the world before. But I'd forgotten what it was like to be in an international town, which folks are usually in America are like New York City, Chicago, even though Chicago is considered, it's on the border but it's considered a huge city. It's got an international airport. Houston, Dallas, Atlanta, Denver, New York, I said, Chicago, I said. I've got to think on the San Francisco, L.A. If you get what I'm doing, these are the bigger, huger cities that are hubs, and these are where the people come in from other countries, and usually lack of money, they don't get very far. And you'll find out the more open-minded international flavor, and many people of other colors, beliefs, religions that come from other countries, they're still in that city. They don't get out to see what the rest of America is like. I traveled the country, I traveled the world, but, I was very fortunate. So I got to go. I've been in every state in the United States, and, of course, Canada and Mexico. But I was driving a truck coast to coast for 8 years for many, many companies, including Microsoft and the U.S. Treasury. I pulled into, military, and then I was military, and the military paid for my traveling. Now, I want to go into with Torah how she became educated as a woman, because she's beautiful on the inside and out. She thinks for herself, and right now she's taking time, but she accounts administratively for her time and has learned how to be paid. And folks, in the spiritual world, we say we're not paid for our spiritual message. We're paid for our time. $1, $2, or $3 an hour. If any of you know, I'm a spiritual life coach or psychic medium, which sounds weird to some people for being a spiritual woman. Torah, on the other hand, is raising herself. So, Torah, tell us about, I don't know if you want to go into details, but you're welcome to, at 15, your uncles, because they had left your way of life as an Amish girl, you want to start there because you were only allowed, tell them about your education, and you're only, junior high? And if you want to start there, that may be a place to start about leaving at 15.
Sure. So in terms of my education, I went through the Amish 8th grade, which meant at 13 years old, I graduated from Amish school, and going to school after that, furthering my education, was not an option. It's not even heard of. It's not something you even think about inside the Amish church. I remember the day, the fall after I graduated from the 8th grade, watching my younger brothers and sisters go to school and crying all day and having to cry in secret, because if I let my parents or anyone see that I was sad about not being able to go to school, I would be punished physically or otherwise considered to be rebellious in some way. And I knew that if I wanted to continue my education, I really wanted to get a high school diploma. That was my dream. I knew that I would have to leave before I turned 18 years old. And I understood that as an 18-year-old, I would be considered an adult in the outside world. Now, inside the Amish, I would not be considered an adult until I was 20 or 21 years old, depending on the family. Or if I got married before I turned 20 or 21, then I'd be considered an adult, but still, only because I was under the subjugation of my husband. So I thought for several years, I tried to figure out how to escape and how to support myself and go to school. And I had a couple uncles who had also escaped when they were teenagers. And in the community that I lived in at that time, we were on the modern end of the old order Amish, meaning that, among other things, we were allowed to have phones in the barn. We couldn't have the phones in the house because God would send us to hell, but if we had them in the barn, that was okay. So I would go out at night, sneak out of my bedroom when my parents and siblings were asleep, crawl out of the bathroom window. We also had indoor bathrooms in that community, and run out to the barn under cover of darkness and collect calls to my uncle Harvey Bell in Montana. Now, I'd only met him once, but I knew he was my father's, one of my father's oldest brothers, and I knew that anyone who had left the Amish would help someone else leave if they could. That was just something I understood. So I would collect phone calls. I knew that collect phone calls wouldn't appear on the phone bill. And this is not a detail that most Amish kids would know, especially not at age 14, and especially not females. But I grew up being my father's favorite child and accompanying him on job sites and being around him as much of my hours as I could. I was around him all the time. So I saw things and absorbed things about the outside world by virtue of being around my father, who had non-Amish clients that most Amish girls would never get exposed to. So that's how I knew about collect calls, for example. So I would talk to this uncle, Harv, and I felt that, he was the only person in the world who understood me. He understood why I wanted to leave. He empathized, I felt, with my situation, and he told me that, yes, I could stay at his place in Montana if I left. Well, I learned through him that I wouldn't be able to go to high school on my own as, for example, a 15-year-old or 14-year-old or any kid under 18 would have to have a guardian to go to public school. I don't know what the rules are now, the laws are, but at that time, that was the law that you had to have your immunizations, and you had to have a guardian, a designated guardian, if you went to public school. So I was stumped. I had to figure out how to leave before I was 18 and still be able to go to school. So one of the things I did was read the local daily newspaper. My father wasn't a farmer, and in some communities, in general, I believe across most old order Amish, you're allowed to get the newspaper if you're a farmer in order to check the weather and agricultural prices and so forth. But if you're not a farmer, there shouldn't be any reason that you have the local, the evil outside newspaper. But my father always broke the rules, one of which was getting the daily newspaper. So when my mother would take her nap during the day, I would read the paper because I knew this is how I would prepare myself for the outside, to somewhat prepare for the transition, to get as much information as I could about the outside. Now, I don't know if you can imagine what that's like, but my only picture of the outside was a small little rural town in Michigan. That was it. It wasn't like I was reading the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or, hearing things from the BBC. I was reading only things that pertained to that tiny little, I don't even know what the population was. I would have to look, but maybe, I don't know, 10,000.
Well, are you allowed to say the city, or do you have to, because of your Amish clan, do you have to say near Grand Rapids, near Ann Arbor?
No, it was Scottville, Michigan was the paper. I read the daily, or it may have been Ludington. So it was one or the other, Ludington or Scottville, Michigan.
Well, what part of Michigan were you closest to? Canada or south, or
no?
Because I drove the state, so I'm trying to picture what part of the state you were located.
It was north of Grand Rapids and Holland. I would have to look at a map to find it, but it was north of that and south of Muskegon, I believe. So it's close, like right near Lake Michigan. We could drive to Lake Michigan with a horse and buggy, which we did on Sunday afternoons. I mean, it was a bit of a trek, meaning like maybe 9 miles, but we did spend...
Wow, so you were up near the Holland with the tulips, right? The city of, tulips out in the country, right? They had Michigan.
I never saw the tulips in Holland. We were, I think, maybe 2 hours north of Holland.
Oh, so you were between Grand Rapids and Holland? We have a road in between there?
I don't know. I don't remember. I believe it was
Bless
north
your
of
heart.
Grand Rapids.
I mean, that's so sad that you don't even know what part of you knew you're in Michigan, but this is such a simple question. I'm sorry, folks, but I'm just amazed that I have such a mind's off planet, keeping up with the world that, you're just a little kid, but they didn't even teach you where you were, like compared to Holland and Grand Rapids.
No, but I mean, I'm just going off of memory. The reason I don't know is because I don't care. I don't want to be affiliated with Michigan. I mean, that's.
But back then, yeah, I get what you're saying. But back then, I mean, you couldn't even relate to were you proud to be a Michigan person, or, I mean, just think of it, folks. A little kid with, I don't even know what your world was like. I can't even relate if you don't even know. Some little town, some little paper, somewhere maybe south of Michigan, Grand Rapids, and maybe north of Holland, somewhere.
Well, actually, because you asked and you were so insistent, TJ, I've Googled it. I'm looking at it right now. So,
thank God. Maybe I shouldn't say that. All right, so this is so sad.
I thought it was south of Muskegon,
you ladies
but
are funny.
It's south of Manistee, so and north of Muskegon, and it's north of Holland. And Holland is, I know Holland is like 2.5 hour drive because I know that specifically because of a different story, which I won't go into now. But Muskegon is south of Ludington as well, like maybe about an hour or so. And then Manistee is north, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes, because these are little small, like, highways and so forth. You know, it's not like you can drive very fast in this part of the state. So Traverse City is another place, another city that some people might recognize, and that's north.
Let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. Muskegon had the Muskegon Chronicle daily newspaper, okay? Did you read a weekly newspaper or a daily newspaper?
I read a daily newspaper, but it was I believe it was the Scotland or Ludington. Don't quote me on it. It was one or the other. It's really tiny. I mean, Muskegon would have been considered a big town, big news.
Wow.
Yeah.
All righty then. Well, Okay, well, I worked for a weekly in a small town in Ohio County for years, Ohio County Times News, but there was about two men starting different papers, and I worked for the Ohio County Messenger that finally got bought out by this little town, Hartford, but Beaver Dam is where I wrote for years. So I get the small papers and we had a lot of, people that were Amish or Mennonite around us in Kentucky. So I sort of get that, but I didn't realize how, I don't want to say backwards because they make fun of everybody from Kentucky. I wasn't even from there, but I got to see how cruel Hollywood treated people. Even recently, in the last day, I saw how they were making fun in a television show about saying he was given a role to be from Kentucky before they killed him, and he was like, Kentucky, and the girl says, yeah, I guess you can tell him you lost your accent going to college, making fun of the guy because he's going to be from Kentucky.
Yeah.
So how sad it is that people that are Amish children, and I don't mean this disrespectful, folks, but we're talking education or lack of it here. So you had you were hungry for education. You wanted to know more. Something inside you, your spirit, really knew something more than this. And being a woman and a child, to leave that, and oh my gosh. All right, so you're a strong soul, strong spirit. That's just all I've got to say. I don't know how else to say it. All right, so let's get on with your story. So you think you were reading the Ludington, Ledding? How do you spell that?
Ludington is Ludington, and Scottville is straight east from Ludington, the first town straight east, although there might be a little town in between. And that's where the Amish were.
You make me worry. These people don't even know where they're at. I mean, and I guess, like you said, maybe people don't care. Maybe you grow up as a child. Okay, I'm on the planet. I know where the grass is. I know my parents feed me, and I can read the Bible, and I can work hard, and I can go to school and learn all I need to know. Is that sort of the way it is?
Well, the way it is that you're born and raised Amish, and your obligation is to remain in the Amish church, to become a baptized member and to remain a baptized member for the rest of your life, and to have children and raise them and make sure that they remain inside the church. And it's of no importance what surrounds you in terms of the world outside the Amish. This is why, as an Amish child, you don't have any geographical bearings unless you make a point of learning it yourself. So I was very interested in maps and directions and things like that. And one example is that my paternal grandparents lived in Wisconsin. I also had lived in Wisconsin from around age 3 to 10 before we moved to Michigan. So I was, in terms of geography, I had keen interest in it. And although, like, I'm confused talking to you about exactly where Ludington is in Scottville, I mean, it's not because I I didn't have an awareness of geography. I did. But I didn't have, I mean, way more than the average child. And so I knew, for example, that there was a Greyhound bus station in Holland, that was the closest bus station. I understood that.
Holland.
Yeah, Holland, Michigan, 2.5 hours south. That's
I love
how
Holland.
I knew.
Yeah.
When we started talking
Ludington,
about this,
Ludington, or Ludington, depending on how you want to say it, but I guess if you grew up around there, you know it's Ludington. That is the state population. Well, if they got a county seat called Mason County, and it's a harbor town on Lake Michigan. So you must have lived close to there to go to Lake Michigan, right? To go see things.
Yes.
And
yeah.
All right, but it's right on Lake Michigan. But oh my God! But they have 8,000, and Beaver Dam had about 5,000. So I can sort of see that Ludington wasn't that big, really, either. Yeah, 8,000 is not a lot of people, but considered a medium size, maybe. I don't even know, but we're going to have to look that up. So you were in some little county place in Mason County. Would that be correct?
Yes, and Scottville was our address. In Scottville, the population of Scottville today is 1,200. And back then, it may have been less, you know, or not much more. I mean, these little towns don't really grow that much. They sort of, you know, stay the same, more or less.
And you have to be born there and not leave there, which I've seen a lot of people in Kentucky that way. So it's Scottsville or Scottsville, Michigan?
No, Scottvlle.
All right. Well, we didn't have that last time. So Scottsville, Michigan, folks, and 1,214 at the 2010 census. So very interesting that they've got Amish there. And so how many clans or groups or churches in that area were you familiar with? Did y'all all get together at some time in Ludington or Holland or have a big, you know, family reunion?
Well, in terms of the Scotland community, in my to my knowledge, the Amish community that was there when I lived there has disintegrated. No one, it completely broke up, and that's another long story. But you know, the short part of it is there was a lot of disputes within the church about rules. Some people wanted a more modern technology or change the rules that were considered too modern for other members of the church. They wanted to. They just had a big argument amongst the members about new rules or whatnot. And what is typical within the Amish, when there's a disagreement about adopting new rules, the ones who want the new rules will move away. If they can't get it passed, they will move away to a community that has those rules that they like. And if there's a community that has the rules that they like, they'll start a new community. And whoever starts the community, that male is the boss who makes the rules. So back to Janet's question from in the beginning, that's how the rules are made and determined, is through dispute.
Well, let me tell you about in the beginning the rules of your little town, which apparently it's very small. It's only like 10 miles southwest of the village of Fountain, 5 miles west of the village of Custer, city of Ludington. And it says that the city of Scottville is approximately 10 miles east of the city of Ludington. Now, that's if we want to believe what's in Wikipedia. But get this, folks, it's 92%, almost 93, 92.9 white. Okay, demographics, 0.9 African American, 0.5 Native American, and 2% Asian. So, yeah. So talk about, and we're going to talk about the rest of the world and how we're doing with the browning of America and, you know, what's going on in China and North Korea and all that. But what's so funny is you're American, and so am I. So, folks, let's look at this. We're all supposed to be basically majority. Let's just go open-minded, okay? 3 women here, 1 in Hawaii, 1 in Florida, and 1 in New York City. And we're 3 women, and we could tell you that we're all 3 white and white women, but we have a voice now thanks to Blog Talk Radio right now. But still, we're 3 women. We have that in common. We're 3 white women. And then after that, we're Americans. And out of the 3 of us, even though Janet and I were out here, we may not have the academic schedule that you do. So let's go back to education. So far, that's all we have in common. Now, do you have a family and children? I had lost several husbands. I've had 4 children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, but I've never had more emotional upset than trying to be back with family after 20 years of only being with my husband and my kids only coming to see me occasionally. But do you have family now or no?
I don't have a blood family. My family are the friends I've chosen. I've had to create my family outside the Amish because once I escaped, I was ostracized, shunned by my parents. Neither my mother nor my father would ever lift a finger to do anything that would help me. In fact, I believe they have some sort of sinister pleasure in the fact that I was raped because they feel that God was punishing me. Well, that's what you get for having escaped, left the church, disobeyed your parents. They to this day have never reached out and acknowledged, expressed anything in terms of compassion for having, the fact that I was raped. So that was sort of like my last attempt at trying to establish a good relationship or somewhat amicable relationship with my parents. After that, I learned that it was just a one-way street. So from that point onward, that's when I really was able to just let go of that longing for parents, that, questioning why don't my parents love me, and that need sort of to have biological parents who accepted me. Like I realized that was just never going to happen for whatever reason, and that I would need to form my own family, choose those who are my family. And I've been fortunate to have found what I call my tribe, but it didn't happen until many years later, until close to 20 years after my escape. So this has been a very recent development, comparatively speaking.
Wow. Okay. Janet, any questions, or you want her to go on with leaving the Amish in this little town that she's got in common? We're women, our families come and go.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on, you were making an analysis of the 3 women, and you are the one that had lots of children, and you have, I don't know if you counted how many grandchildren, and do you have great-grandchildren?
I have 4 daughters, and each had roughly 4 kids, and then they've all got kids that they've been spitting out the last few years. So all my great-grandchildren are between 0, and when I have them on the way, till 4 years old. So I should be able to see, children, great-grandchildren, 3. I'm 4th generation. So to get 5 generations alive at any family is a big deal if you see 5 levels. But I had my kids at 15, 16, 18, and 21. So I was a very young mother. So,
wow.
But
so
other than that, women are.
Do you know how many
I can't count
you have?
I have no clue. Facebook. Go Facebook
it's
them.
Like we don't know. We don't know how many great grandchildren we have. Oh, that's amazing.
No.
Well, I don't have children. So here's another thing to look at. So I am white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. I do not really resonate with my faith of childhood. I'm an alternative researcher. I've gone pre-biblical back to pre-Sumerian to the Anunnaki, and I have an alternative theory of existence outside of the biblical construct. So that offends people. And I have no children. I wanted to have children, was not able to have children. And when I was 39, I left my family because it was so dysfunctional. And I moved from Pennsylvania all the way over to Hawaii to find myself because I was very sick. Went to the pulmonary specialist, and the doctor said, "You don't have long to live." And I realized that part of my being ill at ease and having lung disease was that I was not happy with my life. So, and my life hasn't been perfect, but I have a much better life than what I had. So, Torah left to make a better life for herself. Janet left to make a better life for herself. TJ, you apparently left in the middle part of your life.
I left for
having
a terrible divorce. Yeah, my husband was beating me behind the doors, and my mother had 7 of her own. We had this upper middle class look, you know, because that's what you did, and you kept everything behind closed doors in the 50s and 60s. But the good part is, 67, I signed government papers because I was a beautiful girl in a Houston Chronicle. Thank God for that snapshot, because it saved my life. But then my husband was my first man I was ever with. And after 2 years, we finally had sex at the drive-in. I had my majorette costume on and didn't know what it was until I was pregnant. And it wasn't like something we were doing all the time. It just sort of happened and didn't really happen much after that. But that's how I wound up being at 15 a pregnant girl. And they made us quit school back then. So I couldn't finish high school. They didn't allow you to. You could switch to another high school, from what I understand, but my mother was so embarrassed because of their prestige, and you know, we were written out in the paper, and we were upper middle class, and my mother was a writer, and anyway, we went over to another county to have me married. But that's the dark side, because you know, she wanted me to give up my child and her to raise it, either abort, which I didn't believe in. And she did. She was very democratic, open-minded, and but she never had any, as far as I know. She had 7 kids. But she wanted me to. He had 60s. Oh, but he got a job at NASA, and that saved us. Between the government, you know, recruiting me during a James Bond movie and me being in the newspaper, I got lucky. But then my kids come along, and then I want to be law enforcement psychology. I was very outgoing, wanted to think for myself. And, you know, my grandmother worked. Her mother was a school teacher, even though Amish are Mennonite. I think it was Mennonite, but she taught Indians in Michigan. And then mother's mother worked, and then she worked and then went to brown paper mill because we were sawyers. We were paper mill people. And then they got manuscript and their culture. And then mother grew up wanting to be a secretary and went and got, I mean, that was, boy, think about it. Ooh, a secretary, not a wife. So she was a wife and a mother, but she became a secretary and learned shorthand back then. They took shorthand. She was very proud of her Greg shorthand. I was very proud for her. So she could type, and then she started working on those punch key when computers were starting to come in, and they did punch cards. She was a punch card person. But I remember all that, and I remember, you know, how it was. But I was the oldest, and I resented my parents getting divorced, and then I resented the fact that I wound up getting divorced, but I could only get beat so long. I finally decided to stand up and get beat no more. And then I found out it was because he had a secret life. So many men do. They're married to women, but they have a thing for men on the other side, but nobody knows except the other musicians and, you know, men know. So the secrets of men was what I had to go through. So finally, I divorced him, and my kids go back and forth between where I was stationed in Chicago or, you know, like in New York, I went to Rochester, then I went to Hawaii. So they were during that period of time. So they moved around. But Angelique went up to college with me, my oldest, and Steffi came to Hawaii. Gigi came to Hawaii. Lauren came up to Chicago and worked. I got them all jobs working title searching for TRW with me during the summer. But Lauren went on to become a manager at Burger King, and she wouldn't come to Hawaii. She was, managing a Burger King and in love down here in Florida. So needless to say, we're all back here in Florida. So my good side is that all the jobs I had to work, get a GED, go get law enforcement, made straight A's. Then I went to University of Alabama, started investigative services, and then went to work for rich attorneys, and then the government hired me because I was on some Agent Orange case about the World War II or Vietnam. And then I got some great cases, and, then I wanted to be a corporate president, became that, and learned how the world worked. And then I went out and drove a truck coast to coast after traveling the world and being what's called a non-official investigator with the guy, the one that not really observed, but doing cases.
You were spy. You were spy.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't like that word, but that's what they call people like me, because I learned how to defend myself and take up for myself. I wasn't going to be beat on anymore. Let's just put it that way. I wore a lot of uniforms.
Yeah.
So now this lady here, Tara, folks, her story is nothing.
This lady.
Her story is so awesome, because even though I was growing up, the point is women have crosses to bear. We all have problems and issues. Everybody has their own family issues. We're women. We're born in America. But listen, we're all different. So, Torah, back to you. You were able to go, and we all have had abuse and sexual abuse, Janet, me, and Torah. That could be a whole other story.
That was the other point I wanted to make, is that, we all had extreme abuse. I had physical abuse and sexual abuse, and now I'm a counselor, and it seems like it's like almost 100%. That somewhere in the path of a woman's life, there's some kind of, at least it's inappropriate energy, like somebody lusting after them that's an authority figure that shouldn't be doing that, an older brother or father
Men are
or
still
uncle
not
or
respecting
grandfather.
women. They don't respect
and so
women's
we really want
boundaries.
that to change. So I'm going to pass it back to you, TJ, but if you want me, I'm on mute, and just ask me a question. Give me a second to get off mute, and I will talk away. Okay, back to you.
Okay, I want to see if the girl that I've met recently, she's like me, 3 months younger than me, but she and I talked today. We both have children that have ADHD, and she's been meeting a whole lot of spiritual women that are strong, and yet we have children with emotional issues. I had to tell my 19-year-old, I had to tell him no more. I can't do this anymore, and he's 19, and she has a 19-year-old son. So I was trying to see if she was here without cutting the show off, but I can't seem to get into my show right now. I wanted to see, why is this happening? This show, I don't understand. I don't want to cut it off, and I can't see her. So if you're listening, forgive me. I'm going to try to get over to my board. But Torah, what you're doing, I believe you're telling your story, and people need to read your book. So let's mention it, and I'm going to try to get in the studio. So let's, at this time, mention your book, and you're helping people. No, I don't see her. I just got back into the studio. So let's just go forward with Torah's story. All these women have issues. We're all starting to talk now, because some of the women came out, and they still are coming out, because men have used and abused us. And it's like the women's suffrage movement back when women got the vote. What's going on, Torah? Are we just saying enough is enough now around the world? What's going on that you know about with women?
I feel that that's what it is. Women are finally standing up collectively and saying enough is enough. And I did not think that I would see that in my lifetime. But this has been my mission for my whole life, was to say this is not right. As a child, I fought the bullies on the playground. I mean, I was a little girl who was overweight and couldn't run fast, and didn't have any tactical skills, but I would fight these male bullies because that wasn't right, how they treated, the other kids. And the teachers, the adults, never did anything. So I realized as I got older that, women, I as a girl, just simply for having been born as a female, I was inferior. I was less than. And I just did not feel that was right. And that was another, one of the reasons that drove me to escape was, had I bought into the belief that, I should just follow the rules and not question and just be, subject myself under the patriarchal structure, I would have never escaped. So clearly I wasn't okay with that patriarchy. And what I saw when I came into mainstream America, it was the same system. So I changed, I wear different clothes. I have one of the best educations you can get in the U.S. and the world, and I have unlimited opportunities, pretty much, especially compared to had I stayed inside the Amish. But the world still runs under the patriarchy. And with the Me Too movement, this is now what I see as the beginning of the disruption of the patriarchal structure. At first, when I saw the women from Hollywood coming out and speaking against Harvey Weinstein, for example, and other big names, I thought it would just die out and nothing would change. But it kept coming out and kept coming out. And
oh my gosh, I can't believe you mentioned Weinstein. So Harvey and his brother, the other Weinstein's okay? Because I always think of Bill Cosby, but Weinstein's after the Bill Cosby scandal, is it not? Bill Cosby doing things to women.
Well, Cosby was first, but Weinstein is kind of the challenging the traditional casting couch, right? We all think of Marilyn Monroe and what she had to do in order to become Marilyn Monroe. And apparently that casting couch has been going on since the 40s or the 30s or whenever it started. So now we see things changing, but I don't think it's fast enough. I think that we should. I maybe should shut up, but because
CNN's covering it. It can't be that hush hush, Janet, because CNN's covering the. She brought him up, and folks, Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby. We're not apologizing for that.
No,
we're just going to talk about it a little bit.
What I'm talking about is this abuse, the sexual abuse from men in authority positions over women, and to a degree some boys, other men. But it's really a sex thing, a gender thing for the most part. And it's been going on throughout families. I think that's what this whole thing is about that we're doing today. It's within families. It's within neighborhoods. And it's an epidemic across the planet, and there needs to be some kind of truth and reconciliation. Okay, now we're going to all come out of the closet. And the Me Too is not just people in Hollywood casting, that's Cosby, Weinstein, that's Hollywood. And the pain is so deep within our culture, and apparently across cultures. And this abuse of women through these religious, I call them all cults, because they're all cults, because they're just, they're supporting abuse of, the male dominating over the woman, and they're requiring that she wears some kind of dress. And I think the whole dress code thing is abusive. You don't allow sexuality, freedom of expression. Again,
Oprah Winfrey got in on that.
Well, no. What happened to
Oprah Winfrey? She got in on that Harvey Weinstein, saying she can recall the bullying phone calls with him. And CNN is covering this Harvey Weinstein Cosby story. Oprah Winfrey recalls Harvey Weinstein's bullying phone calls. Now, that was up March 8th, but her past interactions with disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein is a wide-ranging interview with Gwyneth Paltrow. So what that meant to Winfrey, she recalled, was Weinstein pressured her to have certain guests on her long-running talk show. So Winfrey reiterated that she had no knowledge of Weinstein's alleged sexual misconduct prior to reports by the New York Times and the New Yorker. Was I friendly with Harvey? Yes, I was friendly with Harvey. Was I in association with Harvey for the Butler movie? Yes, but of course I didn't know any of this was going on. The Weinstein Company distributed Lee Daniels' 2013 The Butler, in which Winfrey had a role, but more than 60 women have accused Weinstein of sexual harassment or assault. Through spokesperson, Weinstein has repeatedly denied any allegations of non-consensual. Okay, now this is going to be news. I did not have sex with that woman. Non-consensual sex. So without consent. She let me. She got that on her blue dress because she let me. If you guys know who I'm familiar.
Oh, yeah,
I think
Bill.
the name was Clinton.
Bill.
Clinton.
See,
So,
all
yeah,
the
you'd
names
think
have
we'd
to
get
come
up.
out. I mean, we've idolized Kennedy, but how much of that was the same thing?
And
we have
Eisenhower
around sexuality and celebrity, and we have
sex,
back when I was a child, whenever it's Elvis, and I think there was before them was Mr. Blue Eyes was his name. Anyway, each generation had their person that the kids, the girls were drawn to sexually, and these celebrities would go to bed with thousands of girls over the course of their celebrity experience. But where's
sex?
the line between consensual and someone using their authority and power? If you want this rule, you have to, do something.
Well,
sexual.
I turned down a job once. I remember in Houston going.
Let's talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Torah, I just want to tell you that guys used to ask me to go into movies based on the fact that I would sleep with them. There were jobs out there to be had, because I was pretty and a model. I was doing that to make a little money, but I was a real model on a runway, furs and things. But there is such thing as what Janet mentioned, Marilyn Monroe, and a couch. Now, what that means, Tori, you know what it means, don't you? Sleep with me and I'll put you in a movie, basically. Now, I'm going to give it back to you, Tora.
Yeah, and that's the issue, is that as long as there is a power differential, whoever is in power can determine the rules and demand the rules. And this is the structure, the system we live under, is that the males are in power. Now, when I talk about patriarchy, I don't mean to say, that's not me saying all men are evil or all men subscribe to the patriarchy. I'm just saying this is the system. This is how the world is working at this time. It doesn't mean that every male participates, because there are some good men. But in general, what this means is if you want to advance in your career or profession as a female, you have to acquiesce to the male. And if you're a female, you have to give the male what he wants, and that is going to be sex if you want sex. If you're a male actor, aspiring actor or whatever, you don't have that problem. Like you get advanced based on your talents or skills or likability or whatever. You're not demanded to have sex if it's a heterosexual thing. Like if the one in power and the scribing actor is male and they're both heterosexual, but if it's a female, that's the price you have to pay. You have, and if you don't, you get blackmailed or blackballed like Weinstein did. Harvey Weinstein, if in the rare cases that some of the Hollywood aspiring actresses did not give him sex or did manage to extricate themselves from him when he tried to corner them in a hotel room or whatever, he would send out this message to spread around to the entire Hollywood, all his colleagues, male colleagues, she won't put out, don't hire her. That was the end of her career.
Okay, Janet, check on the Joan Hangerton. She had an accident 2 hours ago. I don't know why I just got that across my computer. So I guess it's your
Is that
friend.
Facebook?
But it's with
I'll look at it. Yes, Joan. Okay, thank you for letting me know that.
All right, that's why she.
Okay, I just wanted to address that. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Torah. What were you wanting to address,
Okay.
Janet?
Yeah. So
I don't know
that.
now. I've lost.
So what's happening in Hollywood in terms of Me Too is no different from what's inside the Amish. It's the same. It's the same problem. It's a patriarchal structure. Women not having any rights. Women being seen as objects or properties to be owned. That's the problem. As long as we're perceived to be a piece of property that can be owned, there's going to be sexual assault.
Right.
And we're going to have to get past that anything we want, because it used to be. I was very fortunate that I was respected as a strong woman, but I was 5'11", I weighed a lot, and I was driven to be pretty, but mentally and physically strong. But I wanted and begged for education, but because I was held back because of my mothering as a mother of children in Houston, because I met the criteria for the size. You had to be 5'7" or more, and educated, which had. But I had 4 children, so I wasn't allowed to be a Houston police officer. So I went to Pearland and then Alvin, and then on to investigating and going to Rochester, and then going back to Newton Schwartz, attorney at law. And Percy Foreman, back from when I was a kid, hired me back in investigations, things like that. So with you, Torah, now that let's go into, we've only got 23 minutes left, but you can come back and we can discuss more in detail, which I would love to do some week, and just on how you changed, and what all you're doing with your life. But what do you want to do? Let's mention your book, mention how to get in touch with you, and talk about how you're helping women, because you need to get your message out, because Janet we're authors, and I've tried for years to talk about, let's do the woman thing, but now it's all out there. All women are going to be doing the woman thing. In other words, having being women with a voice. And I'd like to unite and associate those women, because Janet and I did an article with us being women in the UFO field with, I think, Paula Harris, and there's a group of women ufologists. It's not that big. Not too many of us go and participate in these groups like we should, but who's got time to do all this Facebook stuff? But yet you're doing something with your life about women. So how do you make your money, girl? Tell these women out there listening. How are you making it in New York?
So first of all, I just want to mention my book again. The memoir title is An Amish Girl in Manhattan. You can find it on Amazon. Google it. You can find it on any electronic outlet, or TorahBontrager.com. You can even get free chapters if you go to TorahBontrager.com. And if you're interested in sharing your story, your sexual assault survivor story, I run a podcast which you can find on YouTube or iTunes. It's called The Amish Entrepreneur Show. And that's really, I'm the Amish entrepreneur, but the stories are all about sexual assault survivors, or people who specifically offer services to sexual assault survivors. So my goal is to collect 1,111 stories of assault, and we focus on not the details of what happened to you, but how you process or are processing what happened, what tools you're using to process, and how you find meaning in your life today. So that's one of the things that I do in terms of women. And another thing is I teach memoir writing. There's a website that I run called leverageyourstory.com, and that's where I teach you how to write about your traumatic story, again, coming from a sexual assault background or other traumatic childhood abuse. And I go through and just teach you how to write that and put it out in the world. And I strongly encourage you to name names. Now, it's not always safe to name the perpetrators, but I encourage you to work towards that, because when we name names, that takes away the veil of secrecy behind which the perpetrators operate. It's only that veil of secrecy that allows them to keep operating and to keep holding their power over us. And again, like, it's not always safe to do that. I was under a death threat for over 13 years from my Uncle Harvey Bell. I couldn't even report what my Uncle Enos Bontrager did, who also raped me repeatedly, because if I reported Enos, I was afraid Harvey would come after me and kill me. So I understand the safety issue. So, but at some certain point in the journey, we have to name those names. And that just starts by simply saying, me too.
Well, when I was in the Navy, I had a lot of cases of sexual abuse. I was in the Sea Mariner program, but I also worked for the JAG in the Great Lakes area. But the men also had some women at that time, and their story was very believable because in uniform, and some women would use sexual harassment. So we had to really dig deep. I mean, I got to read the FBI reports and compose findings of facts, and, you know, before they went to court. And so it can go, I mean, it got to be where it was all about men, and this is in the 80s. Then it got to be where women coming in the military just to get pregnant or to find a husband was the story for a while. Then, now, this was before women were on the front. You know, they weren't pilots yet. They weren't, you know, I guess being sent to the front, which I don't know if I'm in Torah, if I'm in a place where I don't want to know, or I just haven't done an investigative report. But I haven't been in political or war or military stories. But so do you deal with men, too, that call in? I guess I should do it from a military standpoint. I'm not an Amish person, but I can see the trouble there. So it's really a story, like you said, of everybody. But what about the men that feel like, my husband even told me he had a story where a woman came in to get somewhere, she didn't like him, and they were in the on the army base in Germany, but she just didn't like him, and she was after him and filed charges on him. But he had to go before the general because he was working as 2 Division intelligence. But she just, I don't know if it was another guy or what. He didn't tell me, or maybe they didn't get that far. But he had to make her cry in there, and just be honest with her. He wouldn't have anything to do with her. But I mean, it got pretty ugly, and she dropped the charges. But he wasn't looking at her or anything. She just had info. So it can go both ways. But maybe we need to talk about that too, because proof. So how do you do it? Like, your uncle didn't tie you up in the barn, but at the same time, I know that I had a man I couldn't fight off once in a parking lot in broad daylight, and this first time I've ever told anybody, okay? So I was a strong woman, but I was a young girl. It's another reason I became a cop, because it was in a Target parking lot, and I was getting in my car with my package, and he was a big pot-bellied Mexican, strong as an ox, that had a method. And this other woman, tried to scream, and he put his hand over my mouth. But I couldn't get away. It was a slam, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of thing. And I couldn't it happened so quick, and I guess it's therapeutic to talk about it, but Jesus Christ, it's going to be here unless I delete the show, which I'm not. So there you go. There's something that happened. After that, I became strong, powerful. I'm going to be a law enforcement and do military and go after all these guys. You understand what I'm saying? But I was young. I was thin. I was tall. I was probably only 136 then. So what do you do? How do you were threatened somehow? Did they hold you down? I mean, I'm just telling you, I was shocked and I was overpowered, but I am now 230, a proud 235-pound 5'11" woman. So you tell me what happened. How did you handle it?
Yeah. Well, I just want to address the point you were making about it. That, it doesn't just happen to women. And on my show, on the podcast, it's open to anyone from any walk of life, not just Amish. And it doesn't matter how you what culture you come from, how you identify as gender, no gender, bi, heterosexual, whatever. I don't care. The only thing that I care about is for you to share your story, your sexual assault story. It's mostly the stories I get are women because those that's the gender that is speaking out more. The men are still very hesitant about coming out and disclosing because it's such a huge shame thing. I mean, it's enough women get enough shame and blame and guilt and being ostracized or whatever, looked down upon. And men are not supposed to ever admit that they were sexually assaulted. That's a sign of manhood inferiority that, if you're supposed to be the better gender is a horrible thing. So that's some of the issues there. And in terms
and I wouldn't
of,
tell my husband. I was a young married woman. I told you about the kids. I was a young married woman. We just had our first beautiful home. I had my house fixed up real pretty in Briargate, Missouri City, and my kids were young and little, and it scarred me so bad that I've never told anybody. I just kept it a secret.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't make me delusional about. I remember what happened, but I know. I was crying, and he ran over, and this lady dropped her bag, and by the time because I had tried to turn around and yell, but he had me. It was really weird how it happened, and caught between the door, and I mean I hate alcohol to this day because of his breath. Strong guy, but what I'm saying is it happened so quick without me being able to defend myself that I'm sure I'm not the only woman that's ever had a problem during the daylight in a parking lot. But I cried all the way home and then my husband was at work, and I think my kids were at my mom's.
I had a woman that was
bath.
raped. I had a client that was raped in the parking lot at her church, and they saw it from the window, and they denied it and shamed her. They denied it and shamed her. Because on some level, if somebody rapes you, you're responsible.
That's what I felt like. I felt guilty. And I was like, okay, so what's my husband going to say? I didn't want to tell him we were a young married couple, but we had kids, and we just got a new home. It was the perfect life. And then this happens out of nowhere, not even seeing it coming, and I couldn't. I mean, it changed me, but I kept it a secret because I talked to God about it. I mean, I really did, about how can I deal with this. So I'd like to hear how you dealt with it, but obviously you're teaching now. But that was traumatic, but I never told my husband because all I could hear, now this is then, folks, not me now. This is me at 66 talking about something that happened to me at 22 maybe. Still young enough to, I only weighed like 130 for most of that time until I had my last kid, and then I gained to 180. Now I weigh 235. But I couldn't tell my husband. So, Torah, you get what I'm saying? Even the man that I was supposed to be the love of my life and having these kids, and I knew him out of school, but I couldn't tell him because I knew in the early 70s it was going to be my fault. It was going to be my fault, and I knew that. I didn't know, and so I never told him. He's dead now. Yeah. So he doesn't know unless he's listening from up there, which could possibly be. So people keep secrets, but I was scared that if I told him, what did you do? I was like, he's going to make it my fault.
Yeah. Well, those are common reasons for people not to speak out is depending on what culture or religion or family you come from, to talk about that is you're going to be considered, the problem. Oh, don't bring disgrace and shame to the family. Oh, like that's your fault or some crazy, ridiculous thing like that.
And there were no cameras back then. I don't remember in the 70s having cameras outside of stores. Maybe they had them, but I don't remember. I didn't go look for security or anything. I was so embarrassed. I mean, it was real quick, and just you button your shorts up or whatever. I don't even know what I had on, but I just know that lady. I looked at her, and he had gotten his truck or whatever, sped off, and I'm just stunned. But she got in her car real quick and looked the other way and ran off. So he's gone, she's gone, and nobody else is around. There was other cars, and I just went home crying and shock and disbelief that just, it was like I couldn't even believe it was so quick.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah,
so that's it. It's out there, and now I've had to deal with it, and it's out. But that doesn't mean that the rest of my life goes to, I've done my best. It gave me a strength to make sure that never happened again. It never has, folks. Never has since. But it didn't make me hate sex. So here's the other thing. When you come out and men start thinking, oh, they're just horny or they just want sex or they need it. How many times have you heard the women that's the librarian or the school teacher that's not married and they keep to themselves and all they need is a good, it reminds me of something Trump would say. I shouldn't say that. Like a slap on the butt, or all she needs is a good, what I'm talking about, like
for
that.
A whole show, right there. Say no more. The man at the top.
Okay, you get it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, back to you.
Okay. So
let's
anyway,
talk about what you're doing.
Traumatized. TJ, as a therapist, you've been going around about this for the last 10, 15 minutes. It sounds like you're still traumatized. And I would highly recommend you look into that.
I was shocked
that
it happened.
more with a competent therapist or, whatever. And
why? I just blurted it out on
why.
I just told you in the world.
Sure. Okay, so confession is part,
That's a big part.
That's a big part.
The truth will
I'm not
set
going to
you
dwell on
free.
it here, but I'm just saying there appears to be a lot of charge. And that's a gift. When you find something where you're having a lot of charge, that's cool,
Torah.
You can
did,
work on it.
She's brave.
If you find an issue where you find yourself having a lot of charge, that's a gift. That's a key to what's limiting you and holding you back and keeping you from your total joy and bliss. So
nobody likes secrets, so it's out. There you go. Now, Torah.
Right there you go.
You help people. You have a radio show, folks. The truth will set you free. Go see Torah. So, Torah, your gift is that you're offering a platform, male, female, or other, to do what I just did. I didn't do it for that reason, folks. I just need to get that off my chest. So I'm one of those powerful women that kept secrets all my life. That could be a 20-year story. But, okay, so when these women come to you, do you have them taped? Like this is live, but it's going to be like you call a podcast, right?
Yes, it's a podcast. Well, first, TJ, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing this and for saying out loud what happened. I don't know how you feel about it right now, but just know that you've added your voice and it matters, and this is going to help other women who listen to also come out publicly with their stories. And that's really what the purpose is of the podcast that I do, is just you're not alone, and saying what happened is going to restore your power.
Yeah, it makes you feel dirty. It makes you feel like you did something wrong even if you didn't. So my point was, at that time I was a little girl. I was young. I was a new mother. But now I'm 66 years old. I look back and all I feel, you do the deny. I had enough psychology, folks. Denial, anger, betrayal, DABDA. So what is it? Depression, anger, and acceptance. You know what I'm saying? Depression, anger, betrayal. So what? Denial, anger. Janet, help me out here. You're a therapist. Betrayal, DABDA.
I don't
then
remember.
depression, then acceptance.
It's just the stages. You go through stages, and
then the acceptance.
I don't remember all the stages. Yeah, acceptance.
Yeah, denial, anger, betrayal, depression, and acceptance. That's in the, I guess, all our psychology stuff. So, Torah, let me ask you this. Did you major in psychology or therapy? What's your major in?
So my major is in philosophy with a focus on Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, and I also went through lots of different types of therapy for sexual assault and childhood trauma. So I went to traditional therapy with a therapist who specialized in sexual assault. I got very fortunate to have someone who was equipped to help me with it. And then I felt like I hit a ceiling with it, and I then went into other types of therapy. So I learned through like body movement, dance, boxing. I love boxing, self-defense kind of stuff. It made me feel like I could protect myself physically. I couldn't do that when I was assaulted as a teenager. I couldn't fight my uncles off, and I couldn't defend myself. And I realized through therapy that I had blamed myself for what happened, for not protecting the little girl me, which is ridiculous.
That's what I felt.
Burden to bear.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, Torah, you and I share that. I said that would never happen to me again, so that's how I dealt with it. I did never tell anybody, but that's why I became a law enforcement officer. And that's why I became an investigator, and why I went into martial arts, and why I went into the military. But it also dealt with UFOs and my uncle's work. And you may want to mention your ET thing just a tiny bit, but we'll have you back. Janet, we can have her back on the ET Experiencer to discuss Stargate and the cosmos.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot to talk about. This is a hot topic, and it's very volatile because it resonates.
Why? Did you hear my
people.
energy?
Yeah, and you haven't even got behind mine yet. But anyway, it's really good to do therapy on it, and I keep saying we got to take it to the highest level, and so that this does not happen to anyone ever again. And no one is immune, or what do you call it? There's no what do you call it? When you forgo
Victims. Nobody should be treated as a victim.
There's no one
from another human.
On the highest level existence, this is not something that is pardonable, where there must be amends. We can't just have somebody saying, well, I will pardon everybody that's done these heinous, hideous things, because that's not right. That's not right. So anyway, I'm done talking. I'm never going to end in like 2 minutes, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, my whole view on that is that we must enforce, for those of us who have the resources and willpower or whatever, we must enforce justice, because by not making the perpetrators pay the consequences for their crimes, the message they get is that they can keep getting away with it, and that's what helps evil continue to thrive. That's my personal view.
That's it. That's it. You said
and there are good cops and bad cops, folks. We know that, just like in the movies. Half the time we believe what we see in the television shows. But please, Torah, let people know where you came from, your book, and that you've got a voice and you've done this foundation. So, folks, we're about out of time. We can have Torah back. So, Torah, an Amish girl in Manhattan that brings out the woman in you saying, I have a secret. So I just jumped on the Me Too wagon, and it's the Torah Amish girl in New York story. So, it took an Amish girl from New York to have me bring out something that happened 44 years ago. But now it's out. I'm okay with it, and it's strengthening, it's empowering, because I knew why I got so strong as a woman and put on extra weight and got muscular and went and did all these. But you want to tell us the name of your foundation. How you make your money is helping women leverage your traumatic story. Writer mentor. All right. Mention all that again.
Okay,
and
so
we're going to be out of here.
You can find my site at torahbontrager.com, where you can get free chapters of the book. You can check out my nonprofit, the Amish Heritage Foundation. And you can also check out Leverage Your Story, where you can find the podcast and the memoir writing. So I really, my focus is on helping women speak out and own their trauma.
Well, you sure did that for me, and I didn't even know that's what you did. So spiritually, I got you on a whole different wavelength, I guess. So thank you for being a strong enough woman. I admire you for what work you're doing. We need women leaders in America, and America paid in a way, I guess, for you to get to Columbia, and now you are one of the women that are educated and a strong administrator for the rest of us. So thank you for your work. Thank you, Janet Carroll Lessin, for finding Torah and you guys hooking up. And thank you, everybody, for promoting TJ Morris ET Radio. And I guess we want to be known as strong women, but we're also spiritual women. And we're coming out with our truth. So world, be aware. Love and light, everybody. Torah, we'll have you back if it's okay, and we'll promote your stuff. And folks, Stargate to the Cosmos. Yeah, Janet, Stargate to the Cosmos. Okay, Janet, thank you so much. We'll see you Sunday. Torah, we want to have you back someday on a spiritual show, too. All right?
Absolutely. I would love to. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. It's been wonderful. Thank you, Torah. And we'll have you on a website, and we'll put this podcast out now that we've got it recorded. So thank you so much. And I'm trying to find the button right now to get us out of here. Okay. Here we go. We're going to do Sweet Dreams. Love and light, everybody. This is yours truly. Thank you, Torah.
Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I to disagree? Travel the world and the seven seas. Everybody's looking for something. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to get used by you. Some of them want to abuse you. Some of them want to be abused. Dreams are made of this. Who am I to disagree? Travel the world and the seven seas. Everybody's looking for something. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to get used by you. Some of them want to abuse you. Some of them want to be abused.
thank you, everybody, for joining us. Join us Sundays 6 to 8 for our spiritual journey as Universal Life Ministers, 6 to 8. If you want to be an ACO club member, I have Teresa J. Morris Ministries for a reason, and we're non-denominational on Sundays, 6 to 8 Central, that's 7 to 9 Eastern. And we skip Monday and Tuesday, come back Wednesday for Weird Science, Unexplainable Paranormal with Tommy Oxblood. Thursday, Alien Hunters with Daryl Sims and myself and Tommy Oxblood. And then we'll be back here Friday with a guest and Janet Carroll Lessin of Hawaii. Maybe more women. Thank you, everybody. God bless.
Want entertainment designed just for you? Then check out customizable streaming TV from Xfinity. It makes your life simple, easy, awesome.
Xfinity gives you customizable streaming TV options. Enjoy the most free shows anywhere on any device, and even access your streaming apps right on your TV with X1. Go to Xfinity.com, call 1-800-XFINITY, or visit a store today to learn more. Restrictions apply.